I have a very similar story. When my mom calls, I have to drop everything and talk to her. Unfortunately, I can't always do it. She's retired and lives alone. She has all the time in the world and no sense of timing. She either doesn't understand or forgets what it means to be a working mother of two. Susan sighs. I thought it was just my issue. No, it's not. My mom lives in Brooklyn. I call her as often as I can, but during tax season, it's hard to manage. She says she understands, but if I don't call, I'd spend so much time explaining how busy I was that I'd rather find a way to make 25 hours in a day just to call her. Usually, I manage, but I remember the toughest time a few years ago. Do you mean that time when you lived in that tiny apartment? Yes. Oh, I remember. I visited your new apartment and was shocked. Susan laughs. What happened to me? That's a simple question with a complex answer. Everything happened at once. A few years earlier, I lost my permanent job. I searched for a job for over 6 months, realizing it was futile. I decided to try different businesses and, fortunately, found some success. However, they didn't bring in as much income as my old job, but enough to get by. Later, the job market rebounded, and I was offered a permanent, well-paid job again. Even though it was called permanent, I knew nothing was guaranteed. I couldn't rely on anyone anymore, so I kept my businesses for job security. Also, I couldn't turn down the full-time, well-paid position. Around the same time, we found the house we'd always dreamed of. It was new construction, not yet built. We sold our house, put everything in storage, and moved into an apartment. Since my business office was far from our new home and the lease was up, I moved my office into the apartment as well. I couldn't find another office space quickly because I was so busy. We waited for our new house to be built, which wasn't too long, just 8 months of waiting. However, my husband, Derek, didn't see it that way. He described it as a nightmare. So, I found myself engaged in a full-time job as a reporting system administrator, a 3.5-hour daily commute, a tax preparation services business, a real estate business where I held 50% of the shares, with responsibilities that felt like 150%, 2 full-time student sons with all the attributes related to their age and status, and all the other housewife responsibilities that required full-time occupation but were never appreciated and taken for granted. I lived in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment packed with an enormous amount of furniture, boxes, and stuff. One bedroom was occupied by my older son, David. He usually came home late when we were already asleep. Sometimes, he didn't come home at all due to extreme busyness at school and personal matters, often spending his free time with his girlfriend, Kelly, which made me extremely jealous. David didn't allow me to enter and clean his room, so I kept the door closed to avoid seeing the mess inside. The other bedroom was primarily occupied by my husband, Derek, and I was, of course, always welcome there. Mostly, I spent my time in the living room, which we converted into a business office where I worked with my clients and sometimes with an employee, Sophia. If I worked late hours, I didn't disturb Derek and slept on the sofa in the business space. The living room was also home to my younger son Alex's guinea pig, Jerry, 4 big goldfish in an aquarium, and 5 trees in big pots at the only window. The trees blocked the light coming through the window, making the room very dark. The always hungry goldfish and squeaking Jerry made me think of a zoo, so I called this room LZB, not Lazy Boy, but Living Zoo Business. Alex lived in a dorm and visited us occasionally, usually arriving no earlier than 1 a.m. He would sit in front of his computer until 3 to 5 in the morning and then sleep until 3 to 5 in the afternoon on the sofa in the LZB. At Christmas time, we all had a vacation. Unexpectedly, Alex's dorm was closed for the entire holiday season, so we all stayed in our small apartment. That was entertaining. As tax season approached, my clients started to call and visit me. My alarm clock woke me up at 8 a.m. on Saturday. I expected a client at 9 a.m. I headed to the bathroom to take a shower and glanced at the front entrance. David's and Alex's shoes were there. Thank God, they are home, I thought with relief. Then, I noticed a small pair of ladies' shoes that belonged to Kelly. I knew her shoes well. Aha! She is here too. I thought with jealousy. Then, I noticed another pair of ladies' shoes, too big for Kelly's and definitely not mine. Who the hell is it? I thought and went to the LZB. I tried my hardest to make as little noise as possible, realizing that these young fellows went to bed just a couple of hours ago. Alex slept on the sofa, and right next to him was a young girl sleeping. No, it wasn't what you think. The girl wasn't sleeping on the sofa next to him. She was fully dressed and lying on the floor with only a towel underneath her, looking like a dog sleeping next to its master. My God! I thought. This wasn't the first time Alex brought girls home, and he always surprised me with his choices. But this girl was a champion. Some time ago, he dated a girl who was huge, much bigger than him, and looked like a man. I was shocked watching her carry Alex around on her lap. He dated her for a long time and was seriously in love until he finally saw what I saw. Another time, we came home from work. As we opened the front door, we froze because of the sound coming from Alex's room. It was the sound of a girl screaming, faking sexual pleasure. No, it wasn't the voice of that huge girl. It was someone else. We didn't know whether to leave the house and come back later or just ignore it, though it was impossible to ignore. Before we decided what to do, the scream turned into a phony moan and then suddenly stopped. We stood in complete shock in the middle of the living room. In a few moments, a blonde girl, wrapped in a towel, came out of Alex's room. She glanced at us as if we were the next-door neighbors and proceeded to the bathroom. It felt like we'd entered someone else's house, though the interior looked exactly like ours. The girl took a shower, dressed, and left the house, completely ignoring our presence. I questioned Alex later, what the hell was that? To my astonishment, he wasn't ashamed at all but proud instead. I told her to shut up, but she said she couldn't help it. What can I say, Mama? I'm that good. I hate to bring it to you, baby, but she faked it. No. She didn't. He argued. And how would you know? Oh. Baby, just trust your sexy mama. I know the difference. I'm a woman. I never saw that girl again. This time it was different. The girl on the floor was cute, tall, and looked sick. Her face was pale, with a bluish shadow. Where the hell does he find these girls? I thought with distress and ran back to my bedroom. There's a girl sleeping in our living room on the floor. I whispered to my husband. He glanced at me with a confused look. I'm telling you. There's a girl sleeping on the floor in our living room. I repeated. He went to check it out and in a couple of seconds ran back to me. There's a girl sleeping on the floor in our living room. He gesticulated in disbelief, moving his lips noiselessly, afraid to make a sound. Oh, really? And I thought, there's a girl sleeping on the floor in our living room, but in reality, there's a girl sleeping on the floor in our living room. I chuckled. So, what are we going to do? My client will be here soon. I don't know. How is it possible that she's sleeping on the floor? He was still emotional, his eyes wide with disbelief. Are you asking me? I don't know. It looks like Alex kicked her out of bed in his sleep. He always moves around while sleeping. And she didn't mind, because she's sleeping there like his dog. I giggled. Or, he might have pushed her out after, if you know what I mean. My husband laughed quietly with irony. I don't think so. Where did you see an after girl fully dressed? Also, look at her. She looks sick, like she's on drugs or something. I have no idea, and at this point, I honestly don't care. My client will be here soon. Though, my husband was not a big help. I made my bed and went to the living room again. I touched the girl's shoulder to wake her up. She opened her eyes and gave me a cloudy look. I'm sorry, darling, for waking you up. But I think it's not very comfortable to sleep on the floor. I want to offer you another room with a bed so you could rest properly. I whispered, afraid to wake Alex up. That's okay. She said loudly, got up from the floor, and positioned herself in front of my computer. I was confused. I expected her to be embarrassed, but instead, she made me feel very uncomfortable. Also, that wasn't exactly in my plan. I needed my computer and was not comfortable with her using it, even though all the sensitive information was password protected. But I decided to let her be for now. I took a shower and came back to the LZB. Alex was still asleep, and the girl was playing a game on my computer, ignoring me completely. I'm sorry, dear, I spoke to her again. I don't know your name. She raised her cloudy eyes at me, saying nothing. What's wrong with this generation? I thought with irritation, though I behaved. Okay. Listen, I said in a low voice. I'm expecting someone here very soon, and it would be very inconvenient if you stayed in this room. Okay. She said loudly, picked up her bag, and headed to the front door. You don't have to leave, I said quietly, feeling uneasy. You can stay, only in another room. That's okay, she said, putting on her shoes. She didn't say goodbye, and in a couple of seconds, the front door closed behind her. I was concerned. What should I tell Alex about her disappearance? I asked my husband. I don't know, was his reply. A loud squeak distracted me from my thoughts. Jerry tried to get my attention, knowing that squeaking led to feeding. The goldfish, noticing me passing by, moved their tails in ecstasy to the top of the aquarium, waiting for flakes. I tossed a couple of flakes into the aquarium, poured some dry food into Jerry's cage, and went to the kitchen. Derek and I had breakfast, whispering to each other. I'm curious if this girl was drunk or on drugs. Did you see her eyes? No, and I don't care about the girl very much, but I'm wondering if Alex was drunk or drugged. I hope not. I'm dying to know what it was all about. Suddenly, a baby cried from the apartment below. Oh no. They'll wake Alex. I whispered as I headed to the LSB. In the apartment below, there was a very noisy family with a newborn baby. The baby woke up, and the family started moving around, talking loudly. Alex tossed and turned. I gently woke him, trying not to disturb his sleepy state, and guided him to my bed to sleep, studying his face to gauge his condition. He seemed normal to me. He didn't ask about the girl, and I avoided bringing up the subject myself, knowing he would share the story later. Finally settled at my work desk in the LZB, I left my husband with Alex watching TV on mute. I needed to review some reports I had submitted the previous day before leaving work. Logging into the system, one report generated an error. As I made corrections, my phone rang. It was my mom. Normally, I called her, but due to my busy schedule, I hadn't in a couple of days, expecting her to call and gently chide me. I quickly resubmitted the corrected report and answered the call. Good morning, baby, my mom's tender voice greeted me. The report showed an error again. Conversations with my mom always followed the same routine, and my responses had become automatic. As she asked familiar questions and shared old news, I tried to troubleshoot the report issue. I'm fine, and you? Good. Yes. The kids are good. No. I'm okay. Yes. Sure. Okay. Good. Really? That's fantastic. Great. Okay. Living alone, my mom cherished our uninterrupted conversations. Despite it being tax season, I indulged her need to talk while I worked on my report. Fortunately, I identified and fixed the problem quickly and resubmitted it. Yes, Mom, I'll make sure they eat salad. No, they go to bed on time. Yes, they manage. Yes, I'm kind of busy. How are you? What's new with you? My cell phone rang, and I muted the desk phone as my mom continued, enjoying her story. It was my partner calling. Each time he did, memories of my youth flooded back. Until I turned 25, I was always surrounded by women, which often left me yearning for male attention. Finally marrying and having sons changed that perspective. Now, with another man in my life, my partner, I had found a different kind of challenge. Despite his demanding nature and occasional bouts of hysteria, I loved him as if he were my own child. It was a dynamic I couldn't live without. My snobby partner called to issue his orders. I usually ignored his tone but showed my teeth if he went too far. I spoke to the general contractor today, he said, and he promised to send us all the paperwork. When? As usual, by Monday. I quipped, knowing our contractor's track record. He said tonight. Right, I thought. Did he even see those papers? Neither had I. It seemed our contractor operated on a different calendar than the rest of us. Mark, I have my mom on the other line and a client due any minute. Yes, I'm busy too. I have to visit my children, he interrupted, his tone resembling that of a colonel. I'll talk to you later, I replied curtly, recalling the Russian saying, to compare a dick with a finger, as I hung up just in time for my mom to yell through the receiver. Yes, Mom. I'm here. Sorry. Yes, I heard everything you just said. Yes, I think this is a very good idea. The doorbell rang. Mom, my client's here. I've got to go. Of course. You never have enough time for me, she chided. Mom, I promise I'll call you shortly. Okay. Love you. Opening the door, I found not a client but Sophia. She came in and sat, her back to David's room door, facing the wall. As she turned on her computer, David emerged from his room. Sleepy Kelly headed to the bathroom for a shower, the sound of falling water igniting a twinge of jealousy in me. David used to spend hours in his room with me, talking non-stop until the arrival of his girlfriend. Now, that role was hers, making it easy to blame her for everything from the noise of running water to the cute shoes cluttering our entrance and all the world's woes. David appeared from his room, wrapped in a towel, sneaking into the kitchen past Sophia to grab a snack. The slam of the fridge door summoned Derek from his bedroom, rushing to prepare breakfast for David and his girlfriend. Their whispered argument made me uncomfortable. Rising from my chair, I headed to the kitchen. At the sight of my face, they fell silent. David disappeared into his room, eyes rolling in annoyance as he chewed a bagel grabbed despite his father's protest. My cell phone rang again. It was a client, a businessman. Hi, Vlad. You handle my accounting, he stated when I answered, more a statement than a question. Yes, I replied after an awkward pause. Do you know what you're doing? He asked, the silence in my ear palpable. Was he drunk? Had I made an error that would prompt a scolding from the IRS? Let me think, I tried to joke. I believe I do, I added cautiously. Good. I want to buy another business. Can you evaluate it? I recognize this request. I'd never done it before but never turned down a challenge. Sure, I replied confidently. You're the best. Also, I sent you an email with my numbers for the last quarter. Could you handle the sales tax? Derek appeared before me, having overheard my conversation. Gesturing wildly, he reminded me about discussing renovations with Vlad for our forthcoming house. I wasn't in the mood for personal matters. Sure, I said as my desk phone rang. It was the client I'd been waiting for. Thanks. You're the best. I'll speak to you later, Vlad said, and I ushered Derek out of the LZB. Sophia, could you do me a favor? Find the email from Vlad and calculate the receipt totals, I instructed quietly. Certainly, she replied shortly. Good morning, Serge, I answered my phone. Lou, I'm lost. Just past Road 1. Where do I go from here? You need to make a U-turn and follow the directions I gave you. Kelly emerged from the bathroom, disappearing into David's room to dry her hair. David headed back to the bathroom, turning on the shower again. The neighbor's baby cried once more, its mother chanting loudly. How does that baby ever fall asleep with her singing like a brass band? I wondered. I hung up the phone and returned to my report. Finally, the correct numbers appeared as the doorbell rang deafeningly. Opening the door for my client, I greeted him softly, hello. He entered with a boisterousness that surprised no one. I didn't spend much time with Serge, but enough to bill him $100. He left, and I headed to the kitchen for a snack, forgetting I'd just eaten breakfast half an hour ago because it felt like a day had already passed. Susan chuckled. Only women can multitask. There aren't many men who can handle so much at once. Nope. Not many at all, I laughed. But we love them anyway. And we need them. Yes, we do. My daughter complained about her boyfriend endlessly, then broke up with him and now she's lonely and wants another one. By the way, is your son still dating that girl? Yes, they are. No chance for you. They're in love. Then why don't they get married? Don't you know Americans date until retirement age? Back in Russia, we dated for a few months. Here, it's crazy. First they see each other, then date, then officially declare they're boyfriend and girlfriend. I don't understand the difference. Then they move in, get engaged forever, and finally marry and have kids nearing retirement. In 3 years, they divorce, yet still live on the same street raising kids. So true. I married my husband 11 days after meeting him, and we've been together for 30 years. No way. 11 days. How did you manage that?